Let's bring in Sourabh Gupta. He's a senior Asia-Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist with the Institute for China-America Studies. Good to see you, Sourabh. How might BRICS nations jointly defend multilateralism, as President Xi put it?
What the BRICS nation can do, the BRICS nations are influential nations. As we heard, they're half the world's population and almost 40% of its GDP. They're also very engaged in the multilateral system. And they will see and they will find essentially that they have a lot of partners in the global north who are just as committed to that international multilateral system. Both at the trade, with regard to trade policy, investment policy, and even at the political level. And so what the BRICS can do is provide additional support, a robust capacity to coordinate with others to help maintain and preserve that platform so that openness and globalization and international exchanges, economic, political, social, and even in areas like climate change, consolidated and deepened. Given their influence, I think they're and their standing in the global south, I think they're in a very influential position to advance this agenda at the global level and amongst themselves too.
Yeah, and we know that, of course, BRICS initially comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, but has since expanded. How will the expansion of the bloc support these aims?
Well, I think the expansion of the blocs redounds to their benefit because many of these countries which have come in, some of them are smaller countries, and they are a very diverse group of countries. Critics have panned the BRICS that, there's too much diversity. How are they going to find common cause? But it's essentially in that diversity that they will find their common cause and unity, because that is what the global multilateral order looks like. It looks like diverse countries coming together to a coordinated common agenda to take and to preserve the existing system, deepen it, and reform it. So I think for the many of the smaller countries which have joined, and mind you, we shouldn't be necessarily calling them smaller. I mean, a country like Indonesia is worthy of even perhaps sitting on the UN Security Council at a future date. But many of these smaller countries understand they have great aspirations. They're on the rise. They know that if they don't hang together, they will hang alone. And so therefore, I think they are just as committed in deepening the international order, given that they themselves are probably more trade dependent and more internationally engaged than some of their larger BRICS peers.
US President Donald Trump has repeatedly warned against any nation aligning with what he calls, quote, anti-American policies. Of course, this is a pointed reference to the BRICS being a growing challenge to US global dominance. Are threats like these likely to instead draw the world's fastest growing economies closer together with this shared incentive to cut their reliance on the US?
Yeah, 2 points out here. First, Mr. Trump is wrong on this front. They are not anti-Western countries. They are representatives of the global South. The global South is not framed in distinction to the interests necessarily of the United States, and definitely is not antagonistic to those US interests. If the US president and future presidents can see that these are parties they can work together to build and work together on a platform to build a shared and more cooperative international system, I think it will redound to the benefit of all. The second point is, yes, the BRICS need to deepen their own engagements. They just don't do enough trade and investment with each other. China is hugely invested in some or many of the BRICS countries, but the other lesser BRICS countries or the other BRICS countries, even some of their founding members, don't have such deep and dense interactions with their peers within the BRICS. And so I think this is an important call at a moment like this when the US is shunning these countries and says, don't come to our market, that these BRICS countries see that as an opportunity to deepen intra-BRICS contacts and ties. And I hope that is an area that they will provide greater focus towards, and hopefully we will have a much denser economic and people-to-people interaction among these countries.
What more can you tell us about the expansion of bilateral trade agreements in national currency in order to reduce the dependence on the dollar? Are we looking at a weakened dollar in time to come, and what kind of threats could Trump do to in response to that?
Yes, the way the BRICS countries are thinking about this, and many other countries beyond just the BRICS, including people in the EU and in the global north, are thinking about this, is to lessen some of their dependence on what could potentially be weaponization of the dollar. And so, what they are trying to see is how they can have payment systems interacting. Some of these BRICS countries have very good national digital payment systems. The question is, how can we go about integrating, or at least linking up these payment systems at an international level so that transactions can be faster, transactions can be cheaper, and transactions don't necessarily have to be at the whim of the existing plumbing network, which is very dollar based and US correspondent bank based. Remember, the dollar will still play a very important role in terms of valuation of even that trade, but that doesn't necessarily mean that even if it's valued in terms of dollars, that it must go through the dollar plumbing system, international plumbing system. And this is the area I think the BRICS are trying to take greater focus on how to link up their payment systems and to be less dependent on and less anxious about the cost of weaponization of the US dollar at their expense.
All right, Sourabh Gupta, we'll leave it there. Really appreciate your insights.